The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III, okay?
While Russian forces have made the biggest advances on cities in the east and south, the Pentagon says there is evidence of increased momentum towards the capital, Kyiv, and Moscow's offensive has widened, striking airfields in the west.
This is how the militaries answered the Kremlin command's question about what prevented them from capturing Ukraine in 4 days. Strong people of the steel country. This information is unverified, but this fact is indisputable.
In a phone call with Zelensky, U.S. President Joe Biden detailed new measures against Moscow. Along with the G7 and EU, the U.S. will move to revoke normal trade relations with Russia, paving the way for new tariffs. President Biden responded in stark terms to some members of Congress, pushing the administration to reverse course and allow the transfer of Poland's MiG fighter jets to Ukraine.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III, okay?
Ukraine's president issued a defiant message to Russia as its troops close in on the capital. Volodymyr Zelensky says to take Kyiv, the invading forces would have to carpet bomb the city and kill all its residents.
The impact is visible across Ukraine, including here in the eastern town of Volnovakha. Residential areas in Kiev and Mariupol lie in ruins. The Russian onslaught has also intensified in northern, eastern and southern Ukraine, bringing more death and destruction to populated cities.
And this is coming from the regional mayor of Donetsk himself, that the town has essentially been destroyed. These pictures are from Friday, showing some of the heavy damage that had already been inflicted by Russian forces. Fighting apparently still ongoing in the town to try to stop any Russian advances in the region, but the account coming from the regional mayor of Donetsk is that much of that town has been destroyed.
Children's hospitals, maternity wards, residential areas, they seem to be part of the strategy to force you to surrender. This is clearly not working, but it must have an enormous impact on you mentally.
Regarding the children and the beautiful mothers and what happened to them, how can any normal person react to this? Well, it's simply an act of terrorism, another one. Unfortunately, this is like a tragic TV series about acts of terrorism. When this has happened elsewhere in Europe, like when there's been an attack on a metro station, everyone was shocked. Today, we're all apparently used to it. I don't want to be used to it. What will happen next? Nobody knows.
People in the eastern port city have been besieged for 12 days now. The city council says nearly 1,600 civilians have been killed in Russian shelling. The temperature at night drops to -7 degrees Celsius. People are already without heating, power and now food as well. Maybe no surprise then that there are reports of looting and violence in the city.
They're demanding the immediate release of the city's mayor. Ivan Fedorov hasn't been seen since Thursday. The Ukrainian government says this video shows Fedorov being led away with a bag over his head, escorted by 10 Russian soldiers. President Volodymyr Zelensky wants world leaders to put more pressure on Russia to secure his release. He sees it as a test of the international community's ability to change the situation in Ukraine.
We demand the mayor be immediately released. We're talking to France, Germany, Israel and others. I personally have called German Chancellor Scholz and French President Macron. I'll talk to everybody necessary in order to get our people released. We expect world leaders to show how they can influence the situation and do one simple thing. Get this one person released, the very person that represents the people of Melitopol.
Ukrainians are calling Fedorov's abduction a war crime. International law prohibits taking civilian hostages during a war. International law prohibits taking civilian hostages during a war. International law prohibits taking civilian hostages during a war.
Russian tanks on the western edge of Mariupol. Ukrainian intelligence, Russian forces targeted a convoy of displaced civilians in the outskirts of Kyiv, killing 7 of them. Reports of Russian aircraft shot down over Rubizhne, Luhansk region. Aide to Chief of Office of President Zelensky, negotiations with the RF delegation are now ongoing in a continuous video format. Special working subgroups have been created. Ukraine's positions are determined by the previous directives. Video, Russian MLRS was destroyed by Ukrainian drone. Explosions in Kharkiv. 2 Russian helicopters shot down near Novomykolivka in Kherson region.
Да. РФ. Вот написано. РФ. ДДД. Номера.
Тут ничего не ебанет сейчас, блядь.
Да не должно.
Ельца.
Так смотри, как он горит, блин, вон аж, блядь, пиздец.
Так, ну це походу кабіна, ось тут пілоти. Нема, людей нема, вони сібались.
Людей нету, да? Катапульти, даже этих нету, сидений катапультировали.
Як це нема? Де нога?
А, ёб твою мать.
А, ось тут чоловік живе,
да. Заживо, да, человек заживо.
Alexander Senkovich, the mayor of Mykolaiv, in Mykolaiv, more than 160 houses, 3 hospitals and 11 educational institutions were damaged last night. 8 civilians were injured. Russian forces in Kherson call deputies of the local regional council and try to convince them cooperate. According Sergei Klon, a deputy who was contacted, they are trying to hold a referendum on the establishment of the Kherson People's Republic. 3 killed, including child in Zaporizhzhia region as Russian tank crushed civilian car. Shelling today damaged 15 houses, wounded 3 local citizens in Zolochiv. Shelling coming from the area of Kazacha Lopan. President Zelensky, I spoke with at Olaf Scholz, at Emmanuel Macron. We discussed countering the aggressor, RF crimes against civilians. I ask my partners to help in releasing the captive mayor of Melitopol. Prospects for peace talks also discussed. We must stop the aggressor together. Zelensky, about 1,300 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed since the beginning of the war. 5 bodies, including 2 children, were extracted of the rubble of house in Slobozhinsky in Kharkiv region. House was destroyed in airstrike on 10 March. Heavy shelling triggered multiple fires in Severodonetsk and Rubizhne. Photos of widespread damage in Makarov, Kyiv region. Damage at School of Physics and Technology of Kharkiv, University of Karazhan. Damage in Komyshavaka village of Zaporizhzhia region after shelling with MLRS Grad. Zelensky said that Russia is sending new forces to Ukraine after suffering what its biggest losses in decades. New demonstration against Russian occupation in Berdyansk today. "20 buses with people evacuated from Bucha arrived in Bilohorodka. Saboteurs were detained in Kharkiv, tasked with blowing up of objects of critical infrastructure, weapons and explosives seized. Large fire spotted in the west part of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, on March 11, 2022 with Sentinel-2. Part of the fire seems to be burning down a forest. Since morning Russian troops shelling Avdiivka with Tochka-U ballistic missiles and MLRS Grad. Also Ocheritin shelled. Russia will treat Western arms shipments to Ukraine as legitimate military targets, Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov says. We warned the U.S. of consequences from the insane transfer to Ukraine of weapons like mobile anti-aircraft systems, anti-tank missiles, and so on. Belarus government has said it will send 5 battalion tactical groups to the border with Ukraine to replace the troops currently stationed there. It denies that this is part of preparations for entry into the war. In Melitopol, Russian occupation forces kidnapped Ukrainian activist Olha Hasumova. Battle now on Avdiivka outskirts, Yasenuvata blockpost area. Video of Ukrainian artillery shelling Russian army.
Був розрив. Це перший розрив.
Це прямо в танк. Тут він їде, зараз буде їхати.
Він поїхав димить. Чуєш? Чекай, Серега, жди.
Все, зупинився, дивиться. Все.
Він став.
Piece of Russian self-propelled artillery was destroyed in Chernihiv region. Ukrainian General Staff, Russia is using strategic Tu-95 MS bombers to launch cruise missiles into Ukraine. Lysychansk, the area of the glass factory was shelled.
Да я тут, Лена, тут.
Russian forces firing heavily from Trostianets. Russian missile strike targeted airfield near Kropivnitsky this morning. Medic wounded after shelling targeted near ambulance on the call at Sharikova Street in Kharkiv. Residents of Melitopol went to a rally in front of the occupied district administration and demand to release the mayor Ivan Fedorov. Russian Ka-52 helicopter crashed in Rostov region. Crew killed. Russian army is constantly shelling Severodonetsk with MLRS Grad. Russian explosive drone shot down over Podil in Kyiv. Parts of Russian missile shot down over Dnipro city. Fire in Dnipro city. In Kyiv, the roof of an administrative building caught fire as a result of Russian army shelling. Territorial defense in Sumy region seized several pieces of Russian equipment, including self-propelled artillery.
Де війна? Мінус 3 танка і САУ. Мінус 3 танка і САУ. В общем, втрати противник несе.
Widespread damage in Hoholiv village in Kyiv region after Russian army attack.
Маленьке село Гоголів. Це результати обстрілу російськими військами, рашистами, фашистами цієї ночі. Цієї ночі від руського миру прилетіло 2 ракети. Ви дивіться, які тут воронки великі. І всі будинки навколо зруйновані. Руський мир. Суки.
Large fires in Vasilkiv, Kyiv Oblast after massive Russian bombardment.
Кстати, да.
ZAP Russia begins mobilizing troops in Donbass and Crimea. According to the head of Ukraine's military intelligence Kyrylo Budanov, Russia is also transferring new units from the central and eastern parts of Russia to replenish reserves. Ukrainian air defenses intercept 2 missiles in the skies of Dnipro, and sirens have been sounding non-stop since morning. Ukraine's foreign minister, Putin's removal from power can stop the war. Explosions again at northern Saltivka. U.S. official, U.S. military aid to Ukraine includes anti-aircraft. Russian troops have taken control of a humanitarian convoy traveling from Zaporizhia to Mariupol. Seized humanitarian aid, Zaporizhia administration.